All right, welcome to the show. Our guest today is someone you've heard of before, probably. He was on the show, episode number 24. His name is Doepker. And by popular demand, I brought him back to talk a little bit more about some topics that I think you're going to find very, very valuable. So, for those of you who haven't met Derek yet, Derek is the #1 Amazon best-selling author of Why Authors Fail and several other books. Derek leads hands-on training workshops, courses, and retreats to teach authors how to turn their passion for writing into a sustainable business. Derek, thanks for being here.
Yeah, Tom, glad to be back on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I know last time we talked a little bit about your history and everything, but I know things have changed. Maybe sometimes your story changed a little bit. So, just 60 seconds, like how did you get started as an author?
Yeah, with the bullet points version, I got started, like many people, a serial entrepreneur trying to find a way to turn my passion, which was health and fitness, into a business. So the blogging didn't work for me, the YouTube videos, all these things didn't work. And then I discovered Kindle publishing and published a couple books. Those were a failure too. But something kept me going, and I kept studying. Your book was tremendously helpful, and I took in a few more resources. And I also switched my intention with my third book, which was not only do I want it to be a bestseller, but it was more about creating an impact and writing a book that I would be really proud of, where even if I were to die in 30 days, all right, 30 days later and couldn't spend the money, at least I left something great behind. And so I published the book, 50 Fitness Tips You Wish You Knew, Labor of Love. And that book went on to become a #1 bestseller in weight loss. Got almost $6,000 in royalties in 11 days. This was back in December of 2012. And once I hit that point, I realized I had sort of cracked the code, so to speak. And then I immediately knew I had to share with other authors the things that I had learned so they didn't have to struggle like I did. So created some training courses, Kindle Bestseller Secrets. I published multiple books that have gone on to become bestsellers in self-help and fitness. So at this point, 7 best-selling books, multiple best-selling books for authors and training courses. And I'm passionate now about, really sharing with authors, like I said, the lessons and the things that I wish I had learned when I first got started, because I know it can be a struggle, and happy to pay it forward with all the knowledge that I've gained.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I feel the exact same way. It's like whenever I learn something new, or because for me, becoming an author is like such a long journey. It took like 6 years and like so much failure and banging my head against the wall. And so if I can take like all that knowledge I learned in that time and compress it into like an hour lecture, like to me that's just like so much fun to be able to share that information with people and save them all that time.
Exactly. And you hit upon something which was, 6 years. And for me, I had, if you were to look a little closer at my story, I took a book that I had an idea for, and then it went on to become #1 bestseller in less than a month, in 30 days, from idea to bestseller. And that's almost could seem like an overnight success. But what some people don't realize is just how many years of study that took. I mean, doing not only personal development on myself to get over the inner obstacles and learning the materials and the marketing. So what appears to be sometimes an overnight success actually takes many times years and years and years of learning and practice and implementation. And so it was a longer journey than what it appears to be on the surface. And then, of course, the idea is, you and I, when we appreciate how much it took to learn and put into practice, then it's like, well, let's help other people cut down some of that learning time so they don't have to spend quite as long and waste as many hours and dollars on things that don't work.
Absolutely, totally agree, man. So I know you've learned so much along your journey, and I know you're really big right now in like personal development. Overcoming fear and inner obstacles and self-doubt and all this stuff that like holds us back from actually like living our dreams and doing what we know we have the potential to do. So why is that stuff important to you? Like, why does it matter to you? Like, why don't you just teach how to write and publish books? Like, why do you need to teach that stuff to you?
Yeah, well, so I love teaching the practical tips and strategies. I love the very grounded side of things, which is, go here, study this, click these buttons, do these things. And that's all great. What I find, though, is that most people don't need more information. They need more implementation. So when I teach a lot of this stuff, I find that many people that I've run into, or I go to some of the Facebook author groups and I see what people are struggling with, many times they have the information that they need, but a couple things hold them back. They're not putting it into practice. They're reading all these books and going through all these courses, and they're not actually doing anything with it. They got a lot of shelf help. Another thing, though, is that they're putting some of it into practice, but they're kind of basically kind of half-assing it. And I look at, why are they doing some things well, but they're holding back? And usually it's some sort of fear. And that can be, to give a very practical example, sometimes with a book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, it takes just being bold, having a strong message, and being willing to turn people off and say, this is what I stand for. This is what it's all about. I kind of took that approach with my book, Break Through Your BS. It's just kind of like bold in your face. And I put that personality in there. But what some authors do is they try to make it very appealing to everyone. I don't want to ruffle any feathers. It's a very safe approach, safe in their message, safe in their marketing strategy, safe in just seeking out absolute certainty in what they do. And because they hold back so much, they'll never really achieve much success. It's sort of like trying to launch a rocket into space. If you launch a rocket only 50% of the way up to the, to the atmosphere, what's going to happen is once it runs out of fuel, it's going to come crashing down. Well, if you launch a rocket 90%, but it doesn't break the atmosphere, it's still going to come crashing down. So you have to hit a certain threshold. You have to be willing to go all in and really be bold in what you do. And so when I see people holding back, which is usually because of these different fears, that either keeps them from getting started or from doing things effectively, or when they come into the obstacles and the challenges that you're going to face on your journey as an author, there's going to be setbacks. There's going to be things that don't work out as well. They go, well, screw this. This doesn't work. Or they were overly optimistic and they bought into this dream that I'll just publish one book and I barely have to market it and I'm going to be rich and be able to retire. And when that doesn't happen, they give up. So I want to give people the practical strategies. I have plenty of resources for that, as well as some of the mindset things and the principles, because the principles of success will last, it'll be the same thing 10 years from now as it is today. Amazon's algorithms might change, little techniques and tactics might change, but the principles of success are timeless. And it's by studying these principles, more so than just the book marketing stuff, that actually allowed me to hit bestseller and continue to publish best-selling books.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, you just shared a lot of great stuff right there. But one of the things that really resonates with me is like half-assing it, right? Like every time I've gotten just like destroyed in business was because I half-assed something. Like I tipped my toe in the water, went halfway, whether it was like an investment where I didn't really do all my research, or a business I started where I wasn't really 100% into it, and just got completely demolished and lost a ton of money and just complete failure. It was always because I wasn't really fully committed to it, right? And I totally get that. I see that with folks who follow my stuff too. It's like the people who aren't really committed, the people who are half-assing it. They half write the book, or they get it published and they half market it, or and then they wonder like, why am I not getting results? Why is this not being successful? And then they're just not committed to getting the results. Like they try just far enough, and then they reach a point where they say, well, that's enough. I'm going to give up now. When success was just maybe around the next corner for them.
Yeah, and there's a really important thing I want to point out with that, and it's to give another practical example of half-assing it, writing a great book, doing all this sort of stuff, and then a person skimps on the book cover, for instance, right? And then it's like a really crappy book cover would severely limit the sales, and it's like they would do so much, but then they would just not take that extra little investment there. And that's one very real world example of how half-assing it, or how skimping on something critical, can pretty much ruin an otherwise very solid book and book plan. And another thing I want to point out is that there is a place for practicing. I mean, because what happens with some people is they go, well, either I'm going to do it perfect or I'm not going to do it at all. And then that's another deception, is this perfectionism. They think that when we were talking about going all in or playing big or being bold, they think that means perfectionism, where it's actually this weird, interesting sort of balance where it's the ability to try things and experiment and try things and fail and have that willingness to fail, have that willingness to go, you know what, in my case, my first book wasn't a success and I didn't go all in. I didn't do all the things because I just didn't have the experience, but that was still part of the overall process. So the thing is, that first book and that second book, it was the best I could do at that point in time, given that amount of knowledge that I had, given my amount of experience. And then once I had built up a foundation of knowledge and understanding, when it came to my third book, I was like, I'm going to do everything I can, whether it succeeds or fails. I'm at least going to say I put everything I could into this book. So to bring it all around, yes, we go all in, and at the same time recognize that it's stepping stones of, it's okay to do some trial and error. It's okay to do some experiments. It's okay to realize that you're probably not going to have that home run book your first time, your first effort, your first marketing attempt at something. So that willingness to try and fail and sort of dip your toes in the water while at the same time go, okay, it's enough practice. Now it's the real deal. Now it's time to go all in. So going all in, I use sort of like the poker analogy. Like, you can play your practice games and learn what you're doing, and you can have that. But when you're at the table and it's real money and your chips are there and you got the best possible hand you can have, and you know it's time to go all in, that's when it takes that courage to say, now it's game time. I'm going all in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I almost feel like people who are really successful, a lot of people who are really successful, especially like authors that I've interviewed and talked to, like, they're perfectionists, but they're perfectionists in different ways. So like when they look at their book as a perfectionist, they don't think, wow, my book isn't ready yet, I can't possibly publish it. They think, wow, my book isn't ready yet, I need to go to work today until I get it ready. And like they're just willing to go like the extra step, the extra mile. They still want to have like the best possible thing that they can get. But they're just like not willing to accept like failure. Like, they're just not willing to give up. They're not willing to stop until they get it right.
Yeah, so having that high standard is critical. And the recognition is that in order to get to that high standard, it takes sometimes producing something that's kind of crappy as a draft, at least, not that anyone has to see it, but do the work that doesn't really have a standard to it, so you can look at it and go, now, how can I make this better? How can I take it to the next level? How can I improve it and improve it and improve it and consistently improve it? Now I got to get it out to some beta readers and they can give me some feedback so it can get better. So it's this ability to have almost low or no standards in order to get something created, and then relentlessly seek improvement and growth and development of what was created, and in order to get it to that higher standard. Otherwise, what happens, and pretty much any creative person would say this, I know it's something I believe that you've even said or acknowledged yourself, Tom, is that like if you're trying to write and edit at the same time, it doesn't work. You're trying to write and go, well, is this good or is this not good? Then it's like start to type and then no, that's type and then delete it. It's like getting one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake, as opposed to just let me just get an idea on paper. Let me produce a draft. It's okay if it's not perfect. And then later on, go through the perfecting process through it. And so it takes this ability I mean, I don't know if low standards the best way to put it, or a low bar, but it's kind of like setting the bar low purposely at first and then gradually notching it up. Or being a fitness guy, like say you got to do the warm up before you go and you do the full effort and exertion. Otherwise you'll injure yourself. So have that willingness to do something that's below your potential so you can get something created and then go through the process of perfecting it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, another way to look at it is like, I think people just judge themselves too soon. Like if you're judging the first draft, like it's completely irrelevant. The reader's never going to read the first draft, right? They're going to read the finished product. So, if you try to look at the first draft and say, oh, well, it's not good enough, like who cares if it's not good enough? Like, that's the point. It always cracks me up. Episode number 28, I interviewed Steve Berry. So like probably 20 million plus novels now. At the time I interviewed him, it was like 19 million novels. And he says like every book he writes, he edits it 60 to 75 times before he even sends it to an editor. And, you know, like that level of commitment to success is like staggering. But, you know, he would never get there if like he looked at the first draft and was like, wow, man, this needs 60 rounds of editing to get done. Like, there's no way I'm just gonna throw this in the trash. You know, that's like what most people would think, and what most people do is they give up because they're not willing to put in all that work and effort to really make their vision come true.
Yeah, and so one thing that I've heard is never compare your first draft to someone else's final draft. And even a twist on that as an experienced author is I find myself comparing my first draft to my previous final draft of another book I had written. So I start working on something, I go, you know, this isn't as good as what the other stuff that I've done. I don't know about it. And then I have to remind myself, wait a second, those other books I wrote started out crappy too, right? So this is starting the way those books started. I forget that I had to take it through that constant editing process when I'm working on something new. So it's something that when it comes to this idea of resistance, like Stephen Pressfield talks about in The War of Art, like resistance will show up in so many ways, whether you're a beginner or more advanced, it'll find a way to like mess with your mind. And so having the awareness of it, and one of the reasons I'm here is to just raise the awareness, like say, hey, you know, experienced authors, even we, you know, go through these mind games and have to be aware of them so we don't let it hold us back.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that. Like every day is a struggle. Every day is a challenge. Doesn't matter. You know, I get 20 books under my belt, but, you know, the next one is in a way, it's just as hard as the first one, you know, because you still, like you said, you have all the same inner obstacles. You got that resistance. You know, you've got other things to do. You've got, you know, your self-doubt. Oh, now you're comparing yourself to your first 20 books. Well, you know, what am I going to do now? How am I going to up my game from my first 20 books, you know? And I think all that is completely irrelevant to the actual process of just sitting down and creating and writing that first draft, which is really the heart of it.
Yep.
Awesome, man. So what other, you know, personal development stuff have you found like really helpful for your clients and your students?
So some of the things that have come up for me in my journey and that come up for the people that I work with are these different forms that, since we're talking about resistance, let's just call it that. What kind of forms can resistance take that can either keep you from getting started, keep you from producing quality work, keep you from marketing, keep you from essentially doing all the things to become a best-selling author? And one of those things for me when I started out, this is going to be something that if you've yet to write a book, or if you're just getting going, it could be something called imposter syndrome. And for me, the question showed up was like, well, who am I to write a book? Because at the time I was an aspiring musician, but I was a dead broke valet parker delivering hot wings. And I'm thinking like, okay, so I'm going to go write like a fitness book when there's millions of fitness books out there by trainers and celebrities and all that sort of stuff. Or like a personal development book, like what could I possibly say in personal development that hasn't been said by someone else? And so, I mean, now that you know, the end story is I did have a best-selling book in fitness and personal development. And so I can see that it's possible now, but when I was getting going, I kept facing this block of like, I don't have anything new to say. I'm not qualified, all of that sort of stuff. And there was a insight that I had that really switched that and switched my mindset and got me out of that mentality. And once I learned this insight, then it helped me go, actually, you know what? I do have something to offer people. I am valuable. In fact, I need to get my books out there. And what I realized was that people aren't buying your information or the information in a book. They're buying your perspective. Or another way to put it, and this is even relevant for fiction authors, is they're not buying what you say, they're buying how you say it. And so jumping into fiction for a second, you know, many stories are the same story told over and over. Essentially, most of them are all basically the hero's journey. Among the different types of romantic comedy movies or whatever, that typically follow the same kind of formula. It's just different place or different characters or different little things that get switched around. Well, in the world of personal development or fitness or these different things, I realized that what I had to offer was not that I'm giving someone a new piece of advice or something that's never been thought of before in all of human history. What it really is a perspective or a way of putting it that it clicks for someone. So, I mean, imagine, has there ever been a time for you where you've heard someone say something that it finally clicked for you. It's like, you know, I've heard it put other ways before in my life. I maybe heard that same concept 20 or 30 times, or my parents used to tell me that. But when this person said it, something about their delivery, something about their word choice, something about their background, it clicked. And it means you had to hear it from them. And when I realized that, I go, that's so true. There's so many people who I'm grateful they shared their message. It's not that it was a new piece of information. It was just the way they delivered it. Even just their word choice impacted me. And I needed to hear it from them. And I own the fact that some people need to hear what I have to say. They need to hear it in my voice, how I have to say it. And it took a leap of faith at first to just trust that. But as I started putting content out there a little bit with some blog, and then with my books and stuff like that, and I started getting positive feedback, then it reaffirmed that perspective that, yes, actually, I do have something valuable to offer. And being willing to own the fact that I don't have to claim to have come up with some some new idea. It's just a new way of looking at an old idea. And that's something that we all have to offer, whether we're an author or not.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, that's such a great point, that you're really offering your unique perspective, and that's what can make all the difference for people. I mean, it's like the same thing in business. Like, there's no new business ideas. It's like, it's all like the same old idea with like a little tweak here, a little tweak there. You know, like Uber is just a taxi company. They just do things a little bit differently with technology. And now they're like, you know, one of the most valuable companies in the world, with billions and billions and billions of dollars. You know, but you know, to say that Uber is not valuable because it's just an old idea is ridiculous. Yeah, it's an old idea, but they did it better. They did it different ways that help more people. And it's the same way when you write a book. It's like, yeah, that might be very similar ideas or the same ideas, but he did it in a different way. He did it in a unique way that really helps people, that makes a difference for people. And I think that's a great thing to keep in mind, is that, you know, if you don't share that message, if you don't share that voice, all those people aren't going to get it. They're not going to get that click. They're not going to get that difference. They're not going to change their life. And so, you know, one of the things that really motivates me to get it done, to get my book done, to get it published, is like, you know, imagine all those people that didn't read your book and how their life didn't change. And you know, it's like you're doing like a disservice. Like, you're hurting people by not publishing your book, by not getting your work done. You're hurting people. You're literally like depriving them of an opportunity to change their life, to improve their life. And that really motivates me. That's what helps me get up early in the morning, stay up late at night to like get it done, is that I know that in the end it's going to help a lot of people. And I can never do that if I just, you know, give in to all those fears and doubts and insecurities.
Yeah. And so it's funny you mentioned that, because that's actually one of the motivators for me too, is thinking about the people who are going to miss out on the value that this book has to offer. The people that are suffering, you know, if I'm just taking my sweet time to get this book out there, there's people who really need it that are missing out the longer I take to get the book out there. And that's actually a great segue into another thing that stops people from getting their book out is they fear the flip side, which is rejection or criticism, or what if people don't like my book or my message. And that's one of the reasons why some people might water down their message and try to be like, I don't want anyone to dislike it. And so what if I get a bad review, the dreaded 1-star review or whatever? That's so terrifying to authors. And, you know, even now when I get a 1-star review, sometimes it kind of stings, but the good news is as you get more 1-star reviews and live through it, then you start to develop a little bit of a tougher shell. But that idea of rejection and criticism, that's something that you know, I can relate to, where I have somewhat of the personality that I like to get along with most people. I value other people's opinions, and I generally want to be liked. And so there's a few ways to get over that fear of rejection. And the first thing is to just acknowledge that you care what people think. Because what happens sometimes is people go, well, I know I shouldn't care what people think about me. And it's like, well, now you're judging it, because we're hardwired as human beings to want to be accepted. We're hardwired to want to be a part of the tribe. It's just it's a human need for connection. So just owning the fact that, okay, I know I want people to like me. I want to get along. I want everyone to love my book. Like I can own that, because that's that's a normal, healthy thing. I don't have to try to pretend like, oh, I shouldn't care what anyone thinks about me or my work. So that's the first thing. The next thing is, though, what do I care about more than that? And since I realize, and most of us are logically able to realize that not everyone's going to like our stuff, but that doesn't necessarily help the emotional thing. What I think about is, and I believe it was Tim Ferriss mentioned something about, when it comes to haters, he doesn't think about the 10,000 or 100,000 haters. He thinks about like the 1,000 people that really love what he has to offer. And that hit me. And I started really thinking about that recently and going, isn't it interesting that sometimes I find myself holding back or wanting to hold back from sharing something that I know could be valuable for people because I'm scared some other people might not like it or it's not their thing. And I thought about it, and I realized that it's almost as silly as if you were to imagine a room full of people and you were told that in this room full of people, there's someone in there that is starving. Like they're sick. They're going to pass out if they don't get some food. Maybe they're diabetic. They got low blood sugar, but like they need food like really bad. And then there's some other people in there who, maybe they're hungry, maybe they're not. And then there's some people in there who definitely aren't hungry. And so you're given a plate full of food and you can go in the room and say, hey, I got some food. Does anybody want it? Now, would you be scared to go in that room and offer people food? Now, for me, I go, well, of course not. Like I just put it out there because I know someone really needs that food. I don't know who it is, but someone really needs that food. But what if I were to be like, well, I don't want to go in there and offer them food because some people might not be hungry, or it's Mexican food. And I know that there's someone in there that really doesn't like Mexican. It's like, who cares about the people that don't want it? They'll be like, no, thanks. Or they'll be like, I'm not hungry, but you're probably going to like, someone's about to pass out. They need that food in there. And so I look at it like that and I'm like, how silly would it be for me to not just go, hey, here's what I have to offer, take it or leave it. And if I were to hold back and let that person like pass out or starve to death because some other people don't want the food, how selfish is that? Like that doesn't even make any sense when you put it that way. And when I look at my book or my work as just something of value for certain people, some people aren't hungry for it. Some people don't want it. Some people don't even like the look or the taste of that particular type of food. But so what? I'm not doing it for those people. I'm offering it for the person that is starving for what I have to offer. It could save someone's life. I mean, our books can literally sometimes save someone's life or their health or their happiness, or even in the I'm nonfiction, so that's what I mostly keep it focused on. But even fiction books and entertainment, it can transform someone's life and be life-saving to them. And so how would I rob someone of that and let them starve just because some people might not be hungry for it? Or just another quick analogy, it'd be like opening up a restaurant, a Mexican restaurant. I love Mexican food. I'm not opening it up for the people trying to please the people that don't like Mexican food. They don't need to come into the restaurant. I'm just putting it there for the people that do want it. And you know what? Not everyone's going to be hungry at the same time. That's okay. It's for the people who are hungry and who like that type of food. And if you're not hungry and you don't like that type of food, I don't really care what you have to say. My restaurant isn't for you. So when I look at it like that, that helps me overcome that fear of rejection or criticism, because I'm like, I'm not going to let the people who don't like it rob from the people who do love it or who do need it.
Yeah, that's such a great point, man. That's profound, really. And you mentioned before, like, it's all about perspective. Like, your books can give your readers a different perspective, and that can make all the difference for them. And I think a lot of this personal development stuff is like the same thing. It's like, it's how your inner perspective, how you see the world, how you see situations. And, when you change your own perspective on things like failure and rejection and everything we've been talking about, that's when you can have profound changes and really overcome all this stuff. Just for changing your perspective. Like, you don't have to do something differently. You just have to see the world differently. And then you see, okay, now this is the path I'm going to take. Like, there's no more, like, it's like you're walking in a jungle, like there's this path and there's this huge like boulder in the way. And you change your perspective and all of a sudden the boulder's gone, the path is clear and you know where to go.
Yeah. And perspective is, I mean, that's what we're really just working with is our perspective on things. And so having that bigger perspective, seeing things from a bigger picture allows one to see opportunities where they didn't seem to be any before. So as I've expanded my perspective, and it helps shift the feelings then around things too, because these mental reframes will actually change how you feel and give you more of that confidence and that certainty to move forward. Because really, it's, if someone isn't successful in their book publishing or whatever, part of it's just they need more time and practice, and it's a time thing. It takes time. You plant a seed and water, it's still just going to take time to grow. But if it's a lot of times because they're holding themselves back in some way, which is true for most of it. I know it's true for me in my business, ways that I hold myself back that I'm constantly working through. Really, it just takes a matter of expanding my perspective and seeing things a different way. And one of those things that helped me to break it down to something like really practical, a big fear that comes up is, what if I lose time or money on this? And that's the thing that keeps people from really going all in, as we talked about, is, well, I don't want to go all in because what if I lose a bunch of money? Or what if I spend 6 months or a year writing this book and then no one ends up buying it? And that's a big fear, and it's a practical thing too. It's not just like a made up mind game. That's a real consequence if a person loses a lot of money. And so what I found is a way that I basically never lose money. I never lose time. I never lose anything, actually, from a certain perspective. And this perspective came when I looked back and I saw how much money I had spent on things that, let's say, didn't work. So that was doing things with blogging or advertising, some of my early books that didn't really sell well. And I'd spent months creating them to make a couple sales. How many hours, hundreds of hours did I spend doing something that didn't get me any money in return? And I had put together an 18-hour video training course for fitness stuff and a 350-page book to go along with it. And I barely sold any copies. So, looking back on that, I seemingly, from one perspective, lost hundreds, if not thousands of hours and dollars into projects that didn't work and that didn't pay off. However, all of those things were giving me knowledge and insights and lessons that eventually allowed me to publish not just one best-selling book, but multiple best-selling books. And so really those were all just educational experiences. And I think about it, and it's kind of a cliche, you learn from your mistakes, and Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times making the light bulb, all that. So we hear all that stuff about turning your mistakes into lessons and stuff. But I thought about it very practically, that people will spend 4 years, many people will spend 4 years and tens of thousands of dollars to get a college education, with no guarantee that they're going to get a job or an outcome. And sometimes they don't even enjoy the job that they get, or they don't even use what they got their degree in. But it's totally normal in most, Western culture to just be like, yeah, I'll spend tens of thousands of dollars and years of my life to get an education for something that I can do. And I thought, my education, when it comes to writing some books that didn't pan out well, or trying some business ventures that didn't pan out well, it actually was a lot less time and a lot less money than a college education, for a much bigger payoff of being a best-selling author and knowing how to repeat that process. So I say, when you value lessons more than successes, you'll never lose again, because all of those things just become an investment in your education. I wrote a book, it didn't work out well. As long as I keep going and take those lessons with me, that was just like, a college class on book writing or whatever. And the only way I would have really lost that time and money is if I would have quit at some point. If I would have said, screw this whole book publishing thing, screw all this entrepreneur thing, I tried it, it didn't work. If I threw in the towel, all of those lessons I got would have gone to waste. But because I kept going, it panned out. And even the book that became a bestseller, 50 Fitness Tips You Wish You Knew, a lot of the material in that book came from the whole 18-hour training course thing that I did that was a failure. So very practically speaking, the quote unquote failure was actually the seed of what later became the thing that had my first big breakthrough success. So anytime I find myself thinking, well, I'm scared of losing, I go back into that mentality that if I get the lessons from it, that's even more valuable sometimes than the success. And another tip of how I do that is by creating case studies, because I go, I'm going to create a case study of what I do to launch my next, something I did with my book, Breakthrough Your BS. I'm going to document what I did, what worked and what didn't, and sell it to other authors as a very affordable course. And what that meant was I found I wasn't scared to try things that might not pan out, because I thought, well, it'll be great material for the case study. Whether it works or whether it doesn't, it's a great lesson and something I can share with other authors. And I go, that helped me overcome my fear. And then I realized on a practical level, that can work for any type of author. It's why it probably works for people that are getting fit. They have a blog that documents their weight loss journey. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what's working. Here's what's not working. By sharing the lessons, it gives you that courage to go, I'm going to try something, because even if it doesn't work, I now have something helpful to tell people of what not to do. And if it does work, then I have something to tell people of what to do. And so that getting into that service mentality and that experimenter mentality and that case study mentality, I found was one of the best ways I've used over and over again to overcome that fear of loss, because now I'm focused on the lessons.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. I mean, for me, it's like a great analogy for that is like, it's like you're picking apples on a tree, right? Like you're at an apple orchard, you're just picking apples, like, and all these different apples, like all the marketing things you can do for your book. Because I've tried literally thousands of marketing strategies. I'm not exaggerating, like literally thousands of things to sell more books, like, free press releases, paid press releases, just like all kinds of crazy stuff. And so like free press release, and I look at the apple, I pick the apple off the tree, and it's like, that's rotten. That does not work, man. That's a rotten apple. I'm throwing that one out. But then you just got to look for that next apple. You got to look for the next thing. And it's almost like you have to have like this like childish, like unreasonable optimism about the future. Like, oh, this next marketing thing, that's going to be the big one. Like that's how I felt like before I became a successful author. It was like every marketing idea I could find, I would just gather in all these marketing ideas, and I would just have this optimism, like, this is the one that's going to do it for me. This is the one. And so many of them were just complete garbage. Didn't work at all. But I learned so much through the process. And eventually I did find a few things that worked, like BookBub. Who knew you could sell like 3,000 books in a day? I have one client, we did a BookBub promotion. His book came like #7 in all of Kindle. It was the #1 nonfiction book on Kindle. And now we're selling the rights to his book in French and Polish and Korean and all these other languages. And like now he's getting his book published and translated all over the world. From this one little apple I found, but I would never have found that apple if I didn't go through all the other hundreds and thousands of apples that I had to go through. And so I think having that optimism is like super important. So you're not dwelling on all those rotten apples you're leaving on the ground. You're just focused on the next one, and the next one, the next one.
Yeah, I love that analogy, and it's that curiosity. This could be it. And one thing that I have to remind myself of when it comes to maintaining that curiosity is that sometimes it only takes, like you mentioned, like that BookBub thing. Sometimes it only takes that one successful thing to more than make up for all the things that didn't work. So a mentor of mine, Brandon Broadwater, talks about, the statistic is 9 out of 10 businesses fail. Now, hopefully if you get a little more education, you might have better odds. However, even if 9 out of 10 businesses fail, he pointed out that, his one business that took off and is successful, one of his businesses, he has multiple successful businesses, made him so much money in a year, like more money in 1 year than he would have made in like 20 years or possibly even a lifetime of working his regular job. So some people take that 9 out of 10 businesses fail let's just say 9 out of 10 ideas fail, or marketing strategies or whatever. Let's just say that applied to anything. Well, some people go, that either means I need to not do it because that's risky and I can't take a risk. I got to play it safe. Or they go, okay, I know I want to do it, but now I'm going to sit there and read every book that I can and try to make sure that my business is the one exception and that this one thing works perfectly. And they try to get all their ducks in a row, and then they become paralyzed, the paralysis by analysis, because they never actually just are willing to go, you know what, screw it. Let me just go through the 9 failures and then get the one that works, because that one that works is going to more than make up for any of the failures or to have just not tried anything at all. Which will lead me, I can wrap it up with this one sort of point about another big fear is that uncertainty. People want to have all the steps laid out. They want to have the proven plan that takes them every step of the way. Now that is wonderful. I always encourage people to get a proven plan. Go check out your book, Tom, on Kindle publishing, and study the experts like you that have the plan. And yet both of us would acknowledge that we can give you the plans, we can give you the steps. There's still some trial and error and just practice involved in doing your own thing that's going to be necessary for any author, anyone in their business. And so what happens is it can be like, I don't see all the steps ahead of me, so I'm not going to move forward until I have everything figured out. As opposed to, and there's an analogy, and it comes from someone else, but I can't remember who, where it's like being in a car and you're looking at the stoplights in front of you, and the person who doesn't go when they don't have the full plan, it's like seeing that the light in front of you has just turned green, but you're not going because, well, the next light down the road is still red. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to sit here and wait until every single light that I see in front of me turns green. And of course, what's going to happen? It's never going to happen. But you can always just drive through the green light that's in front of you and trust that, eventually you're going to get there. And that's how it is when it comes to moving forward. It's just willing to take that next step. And I'd say that for the vast majority of people, they know what that next step is. You know what the next step is to take. And if you're not sure, a hint is, who can I ask who might know the next step, or who can I get some feedback from, or what can I get a coach or a mentor that can help me? If you don't see what the next step is, you can almost always take that next step. And when you take it, then you get clarity and understanding of how to take the following step after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think asking questions is so crucial, because it's normal to get stuck. It's normal to have obstacles and things come up and challenges come up that you just don't know how to solve. So I had a thing with my website a couple weeks ago where my Facebook comments just stopped working. All of a sudden, Facebook comments just disappeared from my website. And so I posted a question on support forums for WordPress. No one answered. I emailed a tech guy. He didn't know how to do it. I emailed another web guy. He didn't know how to do it. And then I emailed a fourth guy on Skype, and he gave me the solution, and it worked, and it was fixed, right? And so it's just you just have to keep asking until you find the answer that you need, because there's always a solution, right? There's always a way to overcome whatever problem or challenge or obstacle you're faced with right now. You just have to find a way to do it. And I think, it's you just have to be willing to be ignorant. You just have to be willing to acknowledge you don't know the answer, so you need to go find it from someone who does know the answer, and just keep looking until you find it. Be relentless. Don't give up just because, I can't find the answer. Well, someone knows the answer. Don't give up until you find it.
Yeah, that's so true and reflective of how things are in many areas of life. It's that persistence of willing to keep trying, even if something doesn't work. Keep trying, keep asking that question, keep asking the questions of ourselves. What can I do? What value do I have to offer the world? I might ask myself that question once and not get an answer. I can keep asking though, and of course get outside feedback. Who can maybe, help show me what I'm good at, so just using this as one example. Keep asking that question. Getting into a better emotional state can sometimes all of a sudden the answer comes. It's kind of like you keep asking a question, asking, then all of a sudden you're in the shower and you're not quite thinking about it anymore, but you've been asking it so much, your subconscious mind's now working on, and then it suddenly gets it. But it takes that consistency and that repetition, that persistence. You pointed out that humility to be able to go, I don't have all the answers. I need to get help. I need some guidance. All of that plays a big role. And it's these qualities, these attributes of humility and persistence and stuff like that, that it can be so cliche as I hear myself saying, and I'm like, okay, yes, we've all heard this before. And yet that really is many times, quote unquote, the answer. It's more these qualities of mindset, these qualities of heart that will then open the doors to do a lot of these other things, like sell more books.
Totally agree, man. You know, it's fascinating to me, this whole thing about questions and having that humility. Is like, I'm in this like really high-end mastermind group, and a lot of the guys in this group are like, they're doing like $1 million a year, $10 million. Some of the guys are doing like $100 million a year in their businesses. And so, we have these like things where we like, all we do is ask questions. So like, someone will be on the hot seat, they ask a question, like a challenge they're struggling with in the life of their business or whatever. And so this guy will come up and he's earning like $100 million a year in his business. I'll ask this question about business or personal life or whatever, and I just look at the guy and I'm like, I can't believe you'd ask him such a stupid question. And that's like you know, that's like that voice inside you that's not you, like that negative voice in the back of your head, you know. And that's my first thought. But it, like, you know, we all have challenges that we don't know how to solve. We all have struggles. We all have problems. It doesn't matter how much money you're making or how smart you are or how good you look or, you know, whatever stuff you've got going on in your life. Like we've all got problems and challenges. And like, you know, the reason he's so successful in business is because he's always willing to ask stupid questions that other people would hold themselves back from asking, that they, you know, they just want to pretend like they know it all, that they have it all done. They don't want to look bad in front of other people because they're not willing to ask the questions that they really need in order to move forward and make progress in their life. And that's been a big lesson for me because, you know, earlier you mentioned about, you know, not caring what other people think about you. Like when I was like a teenager, that was me. That was like my whole attitude was like, I don't care what other people think about me, you know? And that's not a really effective attitude to have, because it's like you're faking yourself out of reality, which is, yeah, you do care what other people think about you, and even though you do care, you have to be willing to face that rejection, to be vulnerable, to be yourself, to be authentic, in order to move forward. It's like, you know, the truth will set you free, right? And if you're not willing to confront the truth and face reality, it's very hard to make progress in life. You're just gonna keep hitting the same roadblock again and again and again.
And to sum all of that up, so thank you for sharing all that, because it really made it clear. You know, the big summary of all that is, you know, all these fears and these inner obstacles, it really comes down to one fundamental thing that's behind all of it, and it's pride. And not like the good, I take pride in myself. There could be quote unquote healthy pride, but it's more that ego pride that says, I don't need to ask for help, or I need to maintain a certain image for people, or all of these things that get us in our thinking about ourselves. And yet when we can drop the pride, we can be humble, we can be meek, we can have that willingness to be vulnerable and start to shift some of the attention onto, you know, helping others, serving others with our work. It gets us out of our own way, because now I'm not thinking about, oh, what are people going to think about me? I'm just saying, well, how can I help others? And your mind's going to only really focus on one thing or the other. So I'm either thinking about, what are people thinking about me? And that's my attention, or my attention is, how can I create something valuable for people? What can I do to reach even more people and deliver more value into the world? And when the mind's focused on that, it's hard to get caught up in one's own, you know, ego type of thoughts and worries and fears.
Yeah, totally agree, man. Yeah, that's profound stuff. And man, I just wish I'd learned all this stuff sooner in my life. You know, that's like the one thing. Like, if I could just go back in time and learn all this stuff back then, you know. But you know, we all have our own unique journeys, and we all have to learn this stuff as we go along. And you know, there's no right or wrong place to be in the world. It's just where you are now. And so, man, thank you so much for sharing just your wealth of wisdom with us. It's really been profound, and I think this is going to change a lot of people's lives. I think a lot of people are going to listen to the show and really get, like, it's going to click for them. So thank you for sharing, Derek.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me on again and giving me this opportunity to share.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So before you go, you know, where can people find out more about you, connect with you, check out your books and courses and training programs?
Yeah, so check out ebookbestsellersecrets.com, and on there I have a free training on how to get in front of thousands of people with no advertising cost. And then I also am giving away my book, Why Authors Fail, as a free download. So you can check that out at ebookbestsellersecrets.com/free book.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Derek. It's been a pleasure having you, man.
Yeah, my pleasure, Tom. Thanks for having me.